Today I effed up by breaking up with my perfect girlfriend and ruining my own life. I have never felt like more of a selfish idiot. I'm not posting this to get sympathy, I just don't know where else to turn. I feel like I have taken so many steps backward in life just because of this one idiotic decision, and I just can't believe how delusional I was. I met Kelly back when I was in my early 20s, we both worked in a restaurant and were trying to make it through college. Kelly was an animal science major, and she had dreams of becoming a veterinarian and opening her own practice. I was just pursuing my degree in computer science because my high school counselor said it was a good idea. I really didn't have much direction. It wasn't until after I met Kelly that I started believing in myself and wanting more of my future. She encouraged me to think bigger, and try to think back to the things that really made me happy, and make those hobbies my career. That's how I ended up switching to a graphic design major, and actually getting a degree in something I was inserted in. Kelly and became close friends and then started dating a few months after we met. I fell in love with her easily. She was such a comforting, mellow person. She was wicked smart and incredibly organized. Even though she worked long hours at the restaurant, she never dropped her 4.0 GPA and graduated at the top of her class. We both graduated and managed to find well-paying jobs in our fields. We left our serving jobs and signed a lease for our first place together. It was one of the happiest parts of my life, and now I find myself constantly reminiscing about those days. I can't believe I had such a perfect woman and I let her go because of my own idiocy. We had been living together for about 2 years, and had been together for almost 5 years when Kelly first brought up the topic of marriage. I hadn't really thought about it before, and all she asked was that I saw it as a possibility in our future. I liked that. She used the word possibility instead of directly pressuring me. I didn't want to lie, so I said yes, it's definitely a possibility. Yet her question kind of stuck with me, and I found myself really thinking about getting married for the first time in my life. I thought about only ever being with one woman for the rest of my life. Our intimacy life was incredible, but it made me sort of uncomfortable to think about never effing another person again for the rest of my life. I loved Kelly, but I started to get anxious about giving up all my freedom and being attached to her forever. I was only 34, but I felt like I was still young and handsome, and I didn't want to waste my younger years tied down. The more I thought about it, the more wrong marriage started to feel. About a month after she brought up marriage, I decided that I needed to come clean and tell her I wasn't ready and I wouldn't be ready anytime soon. I knew it would be hard to hear and even harder to come out and say it, but I could have never guessed just how wrong things would go for me. Today I effed up by breaking up with my perfect girlfriend and ruining my own life. The timing was really SHT all around. I realized I didn't want to get married around the time of our 6-year anniversary. I had been trying to think of the best way to tell her, but it always seemed like a bad time. Kelly had made dinner reservations at a nice restaurant for us on the night of the anniversary, and I figured that it might be the best time for me to drop some heavy news on her. At first, I decided I was going to wait till after dinner so as not to spoil her night, but then I ended up having one too many glasses of wine at the restaurant, and I guess everything just came out. We had been having a lovely time, Kelly looked gorgeous, and even though we had been together for 6 years our spark never died, and we always had a good time together. We were both laughing together over something she said when we finally had a quick moment of silence where Kelly was wiping happy tears from her eyes. I thought this might be the best moment, and I told her as much as I loved her, there was something important we needed to talk about. I admit, I didn't get right to the point, I was nervous and a bit intoxicated, so I rambled for a bit about nothing in particular before Kelly asked me to please get to the point. I just came out and told her that I had thought about what she had said about marriage, and I had come to the conclusion that I wasn't actually ready. It was incredibly painful to watch her face fall. It was like I had stabbed her in the chest with the butter knife. She looked down at the table, and just asked me why in a quiet voice. I wish I had drank less, because I feel like I wasn't explaining myself as well as I could have. I should have focused more on my own freedom, but instead, I ended up talking to her mostly about other women. I told her that I wasn't ready to give up my chances with other women when I was still in my prime, and even though I loved her, I missed the single life. I know it sounds awful, but I was doing my best to communicate honestly with how intoxicated I was. She looked like she was trying her hardest to fight back tears, and she asked me what about her specifically wasn't enough for me. I don't know why I even answered the question, I was acting like such an A. I told her that I still wanted to explore sexually, and it wasn't anything she could do differently, I just wanted to try different women still. After I said that, Kelly cleared her throat and threw some cash on the table. At this point, a single tear had made it down her cheek, and she looked up at me and said she wouldn't stand in my way if that's what I wanted. Then she just stood up and walked right out of the restaurant. I'll be honest, I know I hadn't gone about the conversation in the best way, but I was still annoyed that she stormed out like that and just abandoned me alone in there. She had driven, and I was left to call my own Uber home. My ride took forever, and by the time I got home, Kelly was nowhere to be found. I checked her location and saw she was at a nearby hotel. Whatever, I figured she was just being a bit emotional. I texted her that I was sorry about tonight, but she could call me tomorrow morning once she was done being dramatic. I went to sleep that night, knowing I had screwed up a bit, but totally ignorant of how drastically my entire life was about to unravel. Today I effed up by breaking up with my perfect girlfriend and ruining my own life. The very next morning, I woke up with an intense hangover and just went right back to sleep. When I finally woke up fully around noon, I had one single paragraph long text from Kelly. It was typed out so weirdly, almost in the style of a customer service interaction. She seemed so removed from what she was saying, even though it was incredibly hurtful. She started out by saying she appreciated my honesty, but I had ripped her heart out last night, and she feels like she's been living a lie by trusting me and thinking our relationship had a future. She said I had made me doubt her own self-esteem by the way I was comparing her to other women the night before, and that she would never let a man tear her down like that. I'll be honest, my girlfriend was usually so level-headed, so I was rolling my eyes at the drama of the message before I got to the end. She finished the message by saying it was sad that we had different ideas about the future, and that clearly we had none. She said she would be moving out ASAP, but she would pay me the rest of the year's rent so we weren't tied by any finances. I thought she was acting crazy. I know it had been a rough conversation, but it didn't mean we had to be over. I tried calling her, no answer. I tried texting her over and over, begging her to think clearly, but she put her phone on to not disturb. I was a mess. I started to think back to the night before and all the awful things I said. I'll admit, I went through a really intense range of emotions that afternoon. At first, I texted her, saying sorry and that I loved her. Then after she kept ignoring me for basically the entire day, I started getting upset and reminded her that this was what I wanted anyway and that I was sick of her, and I would get a new chick with a better body than hers. I was just hungover and upset, and I never had expected her to give up on me so quickly. Well, the next few months did not go as I thought they would. After we had been broken up for a couple of days, Kelly came to our apartment while I was at work and cleared it of her stuff. Coming home that day was depressing, and I hadn't realized just how many things in the apartment were hers. She even took the couch, and our place went from a warm hangout spot to an empty bachelor pad. Whatever, this is what I wanted, right? The day after she cleared the palace of her stuff, I made a Tinder. I was horny and excited. I didn't like sleeping alone, and I was looking forward to seeing what kind of girls I could get now that I had a place of my own. Well, I was severely disappointed. I put my best photos up, knowing I'm a pretty hot guy, but on the first day I didn't even get a single match. After about a month of having Tinder, I only got about 5 matches, and it was giving my self-esteem hell. Then one night I got desperate. It had been about 3 months since Kelly and I broke up, and I just needed some sort of attention. I ended up messaging a really unattractive girl who had messaged me a few times. She responded immediately and didn't even complain when I said I just wanted to hang out. I didn't want to take her out on a date. I invited her to my place, and when she got there, things instantly went downhill. As soon as I opened the door, her smell hit me, and it was obvious she didn't wear deodorant. I wasn't attracted to her at all, and if my ex had been a 10, the girl in front of me was a solid 2. I just ignored my disgust and forced myself to try and hook up with her. I kept my eyes closed the entire time, and it took forever for me to get it up. As if things couldn't get worse, I called out Kelly's name in the middle of it and started crying. This ended up freaking my Tinder date out, and she quickly got dressed and made an excuse to leave. I had never felt so alone and unwanted. I just laid in the bed Kelly and I used to share and cried myself to sleep. It's been another 3 months since then, and I've had exactly one other Tinder date. It went just as awfully. The girl was ugly as F, and the intimacy was awful and uncomfortable. I kicked her out right afterward and she called me a PP. I really didn't care. I wasn't even thinking about this girl when I was inside of her. All I could think about was Kelly. At this point, Kelly and I had been broken up for about 6 months, and my life only got more depressing every day. I made the dipshit mistake of stalking Kelly's Instagram, and I saw that she had accomplished her dream of opening her own veterinary practice. She looked even more beautiful than ever in her recent posts, and again, I cried myself to sleep over thoughts of her. The next day, I tried to reach out to her. I texted her a few times. My first couple of texts went through, but then they stopped being delivered. I started to get emotional and desperate, and I called her and left her this long, crying voicemail where I just begged for her back. She never contacted me again, and eventually, I became certain that I was blocked. My mental health keeps declining, and I almost lost my job this month because I kept no calling, no showing. I keep having crazy thoughts. I never thought I would become a stalker, but I find myself regularly driving past Kelly's new animal hospital just to try and get a glimpse of her. I should have never let her go, and I guess I'm writing this to warn any other guys that are in my situation. If she's a keeper, effing keep her.